The first sound that morning wasn't the chirping of birds or the hum of city traffic. It was the squeak of an old Honda engine fighting for its life. Evelyn turned the key twice, whispering a quiet prayer under her breath. The car gave one last cough and settled into a shaky idle, the dashboard lights flickering like tiny dying stars. Beside her, her 10-year-old daughter, Amaya, stirred from her half-sleep, clutching her faded pink backpack as if it were a pillow from home. "Come on, baby," Evelyn murmured, her voice soft but weary. "We can't be late again. Mrs. Donnie's still mad at me from last week." Amaya blinked awake, her lashes fluttering like the wings of a tired bird. "I'm coming, Mama." The air outside was crisp, carrying the scent of dew and distant car exhaust. Above them, the Riverside Grand Hotel stood like a monument of glass and gold, catching the early Texas sunlight in 1,000 reflections. It looked almost unreal, a palace for people who lived in a world where worry didn't exist. For Evelyn, that sight always came with the same mix of awe and quiet ache. She worked here nearly 8 years, yet every time she looked up, she felt like the tower mocked her, a mirror showing her how far she still was from the kind of life people built behind those windows. Inside, the service hallway smelled faintly of bleach and lemon polish. The hum of industrial machines filled the air, vacuum cleaners, carts, the distant clatter of dishes. This was the unseen heartbeat of the hotel, the world behind the glamour. Evelyn clocked in, tied her apron around her waist, and adjusted her gloves. Her hands were rough, the kind that came from long days of scrubbing and nights of counting crumpled bills on the kitchen table. She looked down at her faded uniform, a little embarrassed by the frayed edge near the pocket, but it was clean. That mattered to her. Today, she wasn't on her usual floor. Mrs. Donnie had assigned her something rare, the presidential suite. It was a place she'd only ever heard about in passing, a floor most staff never saw. "The billionaire's staying up there," Mrs. Donnie had told her, voice tight with warning. "You make sure not to touch anything you shouldn't. He's particular." Particular, in Evelyn's world, meant impossible. Amaya tugged gently at her mother's sleeve as they walked to the elevator. "Is it okay if I sit in the corner again, Mama?" Evelyn smiled, tired, but genuine. "Long as you stay quiet and do your drawings, nobody will even know you're there." Amaya nodded, clutching her sketchbook close to her chest. She always loved coming here, not for the grandeur, but because she got to watch. She was a quiet child, observant, with the kind of eyes that saw everything and judged nothing. As the elevator climbed, Evelyn glanced at her reflection in the mirrored wall. She looked older than 42. Her eyes held the kind of exhaustion that came from loving too much and sleeping too little. But next to her stood the reason she kept going, small, gentle, full of light. When the elevator doors opened, the silence hit first. The presidential suite floor was a world apart, no chatter, no noise, just plush carpet and soft gold lighting. Evelyn felt like she'd stepped into a dream she didn't belong to. Even her footsteps sounded too loud. At the end of the hall stood a double door carved with polished wood and gold handles. "Here we go," she whispered, more to herself than to Amaya. She knocked lightly. "Come in," a deep voice barked from the other side. "You're late." Evelyn swallowed, turned the handle, and stepped inside. "I'm sorry, sir." The elevator stopped for room service. "I don't need excuses," the man interrupted. The room looked like something out of a magazine, floor-to-ceiling windows, white leather furniture, a chandelier that sparkled like ice. Papers and laptops were spread across the dining table, and the faint smell of expensive cologne filled the air. It was immaculate yet chaotic, the kind of mess made by someone powerful who expected others to clean it up. The man sitting at the center of it all didn't look up right away. Richard Hanover, the billionaire investor every staff member whispered about, was exactly how the gossip described him, tall, confident, and dangerously self-assured. His navy blue suit fit like it had been tailored by angels, and his tone carried the weight of a man used to being obeyed. "You're the cleaner?" he asked, not bothering to hide his disinterest. Yes, sir, Evelyn replied quietly. He nodded toward the papers. Fine. Just don't touch anything on that desk. And someone left me a note in Japanese. I've been trying to get it translated all morning. You'd think for what I pay these people, someone would know more than one language. Evelyn nodded silently and began unpacking her cleaning supplies. Amaya slipped into a quiet corner, opening her sketchbook and pretending not to listen. Hanover's phone buzzed. No, I said Tokyo time, he snapped. I don't care if it's 2 in the morning there. Get them on the line. He hung up with a mutter and tossed his phone onto the couch. His assistants, 2 young men in suits, hovered nearby, shuffling papers and trying to stay invisible. Evelyn wiped down the table, careful not to disturb the chaos of business that surrounded her. The room felt tense, alive with pressure she couldn't understand. Every few minutes, Hanover sighed or barked an order. He seemed like a man used to having the world bend around him, and irritated when it didn't. As Evelyn worked, her eyes landed on the paper he mentioned earlier. Elegant black ink, Japanese characters written with care. She didn't recognize a single word, but something about it looked peaceful. Hanover noticed her glance and smirked. Don't bother trying to read it, he said, leaning back in his chair. It's probably an apology from one of my partners. They're always late. Culturally polite, but useless. Evelyn said nothing. She kept cleaning, quiet as ever. But from the corner of the room, a small voice broke the silence. That's not an apology, Amaya said softly. The air changed instantly. Hanover's head lifted. The 2 assistants froze. What did you just say? Hanover asked, his tone half amusement, half disbelief. Amaya shrank slightly under his gaze but didn't look away. It's not an apology. Hanover blinked, then chuckled, the kind of laugh people use when they don't take you seriously. Did she just correct me? He asked his assistants. One of them grinned. Sounds like it. Evelyn rushed forward, her cheeks flushing. I'm sorry, sir. She didn't mean any disrespect. She's just. Hanover held up a hand, amused. Relax. I'm not mad. So, you think you know what this says, huh, kid? Amaya nodded timidly. I think so. Well then, go ahead, Hanover said, handing her the paper with a smirk. Translate it for me. Let's see what you've got. Evelyn whispered sharply, Amaya, honey, don't. But the little girl's hand gripped her mother's apron. She stepped forward, took the paper, and spoke softly but clearly. It says the delivery is delayed because of customs, she said. And the meeting is rescheduled for Saturday at 10. For a moment, silence filled the room. Hanover blinked. His assistants exchanged glances. One quickly checked his tablet, typing something in. Sir, he said slowly. That's right. That's exactly what the translator texted earlier. Hanover frowned, his smirk fading. What? The assistant turned his screen around. Shipment delay from Tokyo. Meeting rescheduled. Saturday at 10. Hanover stared at Amaya for a long moment, his expression caught somewhere between surprise and irritation. Then, finally, he laughed again. Well, that's impressive. Or lucky. You could have guessed that. Evelyn smiled weakly. Sir, if it's all right, I'll just. But Hanover wasn't done. His pride wouldn't let him be. He leaned forward, resting his chin on his clasped hands. No, let's make this interesting. You said she's proud of it, right? Let's see what she's got. His eyes glittered with challenge. If she can translate this perfectly, I'll give your mom my job. The assistants laughed. Evelyn froze. Sir, please. That's not. Oh, I'm dead serious, he said, standing and handing the paper to Amaya again. Go ahead. translate the whole thing. Let's see if you're as smart as you think. Amaya looked up at him. For a brief second, fear flickered in her eyes. Then, resolve. She took a deep breath, held the paper with both hands, and began to speak. Her voice came out clear, melodic, and fluent. Each word rolled off her tongue with precision, her pronunciation flawless. The Japanese language, elegant and rhythmic, filled the room, echoing against the marble walls. The assistant stopped pretending to work. Even Hanover's confident smirk began to fade. When she finished, she looked up and calmly translated in English. It says the meeting with Mr. Ito is rescheduled because his flight was delayed in Osaka. They're asking for confirmation for Saturday, 10 a.m., and they apologize for the inconvenience. Silence. Hanover blinked, twice, then turned to his assistant. Check that. The young man typed rapidly, then swallowed hard. Sir, she's right. Every word. Evelyn stood still, her hand on her cart, her eyes glistening. I told you, Amaya whispered softly. It wasn't an apology. For a moment, it seemed like Hanover might admit defeat. But pride has a way of drowning out humility. He gave a tight smile, the kind that hides embarrassment behind arrogance. Well, he said, clapping his hands once. That's impressive, I'll admit. Maybe you've got a future in translation. The sarcasm wasn't subtle. Evelyn tried to defuse the tension. Sir, if it's all right, we can finish cleaning. Hanover waved her off. No, I'm genuinely curious. 10 years old, fluent in Japanese. What are the odds? He turned to his assistants. Maybe we should hire her, huh? The younger assistant forced a laugh. Sure, boss. Their laughter was quiet, but cruel enough to sting. Amaya's shoulders sank. Evelyn put a hand on her back. Don't listen, honey. They don't mean it. Oh, I mean it, Hanover said, voice dripping with condescension. I mean, come on. A little girl from. He squinted at Evelyn's name tag. East Austin, right? Fluent in Japanese. Yeah, that's believable. His words landed like a slap. Amaya looked up, her voice steady but soft. I learned online. There are free lessons. You don't have to be rich to learn. Her tone carried something rare, a quiet pride that made everyone in the room pause for a heartbeat. Hanover chuckled. Free lessons. Sweetheart, you don't learn Japanese from YouTube. That's not how it works. Evelyn's hands tightened on the cart handle. Her voice trembled, but she didn't back down. She worked for it, she said. Every night, after homework, she'd watch lessons. I'd come home from work and find her still studying. She didn't quit. It wasn't luck. It was work. Hanover tilted his head, studying her. You sound defensive. I sound like a mother, Evelyn said quietly. That stopped him. For a brief moment, his smirk faltered. Then he poured himself another drink, letting the silence stretch. So what's the end goal, huh? He asked finally, still not facing them. You planning to move to Japan? Work for a big company? Marry rich? His assistants chuckled again, though uneasily. Amaya blinked, unsure how to respond. No, sir. I just wanted to read manga without subtitles. Even Evelyn had to smile at that. It was so innocent, so honest, it cut through the tension like sunlight. Hanover smirked, almost amused. Well, that's refreshingly simple. He swirled his drink. You know, it's funny. People from nothing always want to prove there's something, like it's a competition. Evelyn took a slow breath, her voice trembling but full of quiet strength. I don't want to prove anything. I just want to give my daughter a chance to be more than what people expect. Hanover turned to her, eyes narrowing. And what do people expect? Evelyn met his gaze for the first time. That we stay quiet. That we clean your rooms and disappear before you even notice. The assistants shifted uncomfortably. Even the air seemed heavier now. Hanover's smirk faded, not out of guilt yet, but confusion. No one had ever spoken to him like that before. Amaya spoke again, her voice small but filled with conviction. Mama always says learning is how you make people listen, even if they don't want to. Hanover looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time. That's a nice thought, he said, his tone softer. Naive, but nice. He turned toward the window, the golden skyline reflecting off his glass. When I was your age, I didn't care about any of that, he murmured. I just wanted money and power. Guess I got both. He paused, then caught himself, forcing the arrogance back. Anyway, he said briskly, congratulations, little translator. You won the challenge. Your mom doesn't get my job, though. That part was a joke. Evelyn exhaled, tired. Thank you for your time, sir. We'll finish up and leave. Hanover waved a hand, turning back to his phone. Sure. Just don't touch my papers. They cleaned quietly after that, but the energy in the room had changed. Evelyn's heart was heavy, but Amaya's words lingered like echoes in the walls. And somewhere, behind the billionaire's composed exterior, something small, almost imperceptible, had begun to shift.